The Rogue River is a 215-mile river that flows from the Cascade Mountain Range to the Pacific Ocean in the southwestern part of Oregon, USA. Rafters, kayakers, and even hikers are most familiar with the 35-mile section of this river that flows from Grave Creek down to Foster Bar. This stretch is home to some of the best whitewater rafting in the country, and some might say even the world. People make their own pace traveling down the Rogue River, and we decided for a 3-day, 2-night trip. Our group consisted of 6 guys and 2 dogs. There was Lenny, who lives in Seattle, Jim, currently in Monmouth, Oregon, Chris from Portland, Oregon, Greg, who calls Molalla, Oregon home, and his dog Amber. Aaron, also from Portland, who brought his dog Abby along for the ride. And of course myself, coming from Houston, Texas, to meet up with some old friends. Now I met Jim on this trip, but everyone else I had met in 2017 on a rafting trip down the Grand Canyon. This trip started at Lenny's house. I flew in from Texas to spend some time in the Seattle area, and the first item on the agenda was the Rogue River. Random gear tents, got some coolers. Then show you Lenny's new Lamborghini that we're gonna go out in. We loaded up Lenny's raft and gear along with our personal things and headed down to Oregon. We stopped by Aaron's house in Portland and then headed to Greg's ranch in Molalla to join up with Greg and Chris and get everything loaded down for the trip the following day. The ranch is a beautiful piece of property where Greg and his wife raise a variety of animals that you would see on a typical farm. Chickens, ducks, livestock, pigs, and more, all across this spread in their own little section of the property. His house has a large garage that you see every now and then, but not quite like this one, because inside this shop was his very own airplane. You see, Greg is a pilot, and his farm is actually in a small community of houses that has a private runway right outside their front door. I recently got my commercial drone pilot's license, but that was just at a whole nother level. I did, however, admire when Greg talked to me as if I was somewhat near the same level as him when it came to aviation. But let's face it, all I did was pass a test and learn all the rules. Inside Greg's hangar was also a canning station and shelves where they processed their farm products, for personal use only, of course, as well as a room that is special to both Greg and his wife, but for very different reasons. Greg's wife is a very accomplished runner, and this room shows her personal records, medals, and keepsakes from all her various races, with full marathons and similar races on the top section, half marathons in the middle section, and other various races and events down at the bottom. After the tour of the house, we finished loading up and called it a night to leave in the morning. We left Greg's ranch Friday morning and headed to Monmouth to pick up Jim. After some missed exits and detours, we arrived, picked Jim up, and stacked his raft on top of the trailer. That's right, the rest of the driving section was 6 guys, 2 dogs, all in one truck, pulling a trailer loaded down with 3 rafts and all of our gear for the trip. That did save us from having to do an extra shuttle. You see, when you raft the river without using a guide service, you have to figure out how to get your vehicle from where you launched your boat to where you take out. And for us, it was this sweet old woman named Sam. Sam had been shuttling Rogue River rafter vehicles for many years, and her place in the mountains along a little creek is a nice spot to call home. After squaring away with Sam, we headed to the self-register for the trip. Since the Rogue River is such a popular whitewater rafting destination, in the peak summer season from May 15th to October 15th, you have to register for a permit in a lottery-style drawing and hope you're one of the lucky winners. But before and after those dates, you can self-register and raft the Rogue as long as you have the required gear for the trip. After signing our names for the permit, we headed to the boat launch at Grave Creek. After we got everything packed and loaded into the boats, we pushed off and we were on our way. There it is, pushing off.
Yeehaw! They're not with me now.
No clue.
Well, that looks like wild lavender, man. A little late. Hey, so did you guys pack my Scepter water cooler? Because that never ended up on my boat. Okay.
What's going on, Amber? Abby.
There are some rapids starting off, but after only 30 minutes into the trip, you are met with Rainie Falls, the largest rapid along this stretch of the river. Now most people run the fish ladder along the right side of the river. Some will choose the middle chute, but very few will actually run Rainie Falls itself. Greg is a part of that small group of people and takes this run whenever he goes down the Rogue River. You could say possibly it's because he has a 17-foot Avon Super Pro raft, which might seem large because most of the rafts on the road are 12 to 15 foot long. But I think it's more because Greg just likes to live life to the fullest. We got through Rainie Falls unscathed and continued on.
Not that bad. You know, I did point out, you don't remember this, Abby, but I pulled your ass out of me flipping Rainie Falls. Woo!
There's something gnarly center left.
I see that. Stay to the right of that, aren't they? That's gonna rock. Woo! So is that. So is that. Getting bony.
Yeah, look, this one?
That one right there, yeah, man. It's short.
Cheers!
Us get sucked back in.
Yeah. I was like, you know, I think I'm going to go over that to the left.
There are many spots to pick along the water, but since this was within weeks of permit season, camping spots were few and far between. As the days started to fade, we chose to stay along Horseshoe Bend. Camp was set up, personal sleeping spots were chosen, the fire was started, and the food was cooked. With salad, rice and beans, short ribs, and desserts, we ate extremely well and ended the night sitting by the fire. It's an amazing thing to wake up to the sound of water and the sight of the sun coming over the mountains. Top that off with some of Greg's farm fresh chicken and duck eggs for breakfast, along with Lenny's Starbucks style coffee setup, and there's really no better way to start a day. I put my electronics on Aaron's battery bank setup that has an input for a solar panel to keep all your needs covered. We used this setup for 3 weeks down the Grand Canyon without any issues at all. Camp was broken down, bags were packed and loaded, and it was time to get back on the river. This river truly is a special place. The sights of all the diverse wildlife, from Canadian geese making their way back north to smaller animals, some slithery friends, deer that are alive and well, and buzzards feeding on the ones that aren't so much. It's a great place to view all of these animals, and we even saw a few bald eagles flying along the riverside. Also along the riverside are all of these amazing side creeks that feed into the Rogue River, ranging from all shapes and sizes. These gentle streams coming off the mountains just seem to keep you in a state of peace and tranquility. There is also a rock, known for a great spot to jump into the water, that was once featured in Sports Illustrated. A little past halfway point, you come up on Mule Creek Canyon, where you pass through the rock jaws and into what some call the Narrows. These tight walls make for a very unique ride. There's not much room for maneuvering, sometimes barely wider than your raft, and there's nowhere really to pull to the side. You're just along for the ride through these tight corridors of rock formations. Then you come up on the second most noticeable rapid on the river, Blossom Bar Rapids. The picket fence area on the right side of the river makes tough work of large boats, so the typical run is river left with a move in the rapid to get center and then right. We stopped to scout and ran both runs in our group as the water levels were higher than normal.
Yeah. I was gonna go left with that rock. You guys went to the right. I was gonna go left. But I don't know. Whatever. Wall.
Just down from Blossom Bar Rapids is Paradise Lodge. Now this lodge, along with many others along the road, are only accessible by water, or some pretty intense hiking trails. There is a museum of sorts housing old artifacts from former lives along the road, as well as an old airstrip. Standing out on the deck of this lodge overlooking the river, it's no wonder that this place has been named one of the most romantic spots in all of Oregon.
Right there. Hey, sit. Abby, sit. Half a mile or so.
After passing Clay Hill Lodge and Dinosaur Tree, we decided to make camp across the river from Fall Creek, where we enjoyed more good food and great times around the fire. Salad and chili dogs for dinner. Since we had come down a ways and were not far from the takeout, we decided to take our time Sunday morning with another great breakfast, including cinnamon rolls, courtesy of Jim, eggs and sausage, Lenny's coffee setup, and even a Bloody Mary bar. Definitely a first for me while camping, but hopefully not the last. Packed up camp and made our way out through the flat water. It is also worth noting that Paradise Lodge is where the wild and scenic section of the Rogue River ends. After that is open to jet boat rides, other boats, and more. We saw a few of these thrill seekers as well.
That's an old one. Still a nice one. Is that a kingfisher? That's a kingfisher, is it? Oh, Woodridge. Woodridge.
After a few more bends and turns in the river, we came up upon takeout, thus concluding our trip.
They're always up and out. They are and everything.
Then it was time to pack up and head back home. While the adventure is an amazing time, there's prep work and post-trip items that need to get taken care of. These pristine rivers are pack in, pack out. That includes trash and everything. And I do mean everything. On our way back, we dropped Jim off, got back to the ranch where Aaron and Chris went home, and Lenny and I stayed one more night. We woke up, Greg was back at work, and Lenny and I headed back to Seattle to really conclude the trip.